The galaxy had long been silent under the shadow of the predators, apex beings whose dominance was assumed as naturally as gravity. Systems aligned, planets bowed, civilizations yielded before a mere rumor of their presence. Entire sectors existed only as reserves of resources, organized meticulously under predator oversight. No uprising had ever persisted beyond a single cycle, and no species had ever questioned the inevitability of predator rule. Their reputation was absolute, reinforced by millennia of conquest and strategic precision. It was not merely strength that defined them, it was efficiency, ruthlessness, and the disciplined coordination of countless worlds working toward a singular, unchallenged purpose. Their bodies were engineered for supremacy. Each predator possessed layered musculature capable of exerting force that could crush smaller species without conscious effort. Senses extended far beyond the human concept of perception, allowing them to detect the faintest energy signatures across light years. Communication was instantaneous and precise, conducted through both vocalization and subtle bioluminescent signals that conveyed intent, emotion, and strategy simultaneously. They moved with a certainty bred from eons of dominance, each decision reinforced by centuries of predictive models and battlefield analysis. Any opposition, no matter how numerous, crumbled under the coordination of predator hierarchies. Culture had evolved alongside their power, shaped by necessity and obsession with superiority. Ritualized combat determined social rank, but it was more than display, it was an ongoing evaluation of skill, cunning, and dominance. Failure was unthinkable, and compassion was categorized as weakness. Knowledge was accumulated not for enlightenment but for tactical advantage, and history was recorded to catalog enemies defeated and alliances subjugated. These records were not mere chronicles. They were lessons, blueprints for conquest refined over generations. Planets fell not because of luck but because the predators applied all information and experience toward predictable, unavoidable outcomes. The galaxy itself had been molded by their presence. Trade routes, communication networks, and star systems were aligned to maximize predator influence. Civilizations adapted not to thrive but to survive. Entire species had abandoned ambition in favor of compliance, teaching generations that resistance was a form of self-destruction. Legends told of entire fleets obliterated within hours, of planets reduced to nothingness to demonstrate that the predator code was absolute. Fear was a language understood universally, and the predators spoke it fluently. Those few who attempted defiance vanished quietly, leaving only cautionary tales. Humans existed on the periphery, noted in passing, insignificant in scope of awareness. The predators had catalogued the species, but only as a minor statistical anomaly. Humans had neither fleets to intimidate nor civilizations to conquer. They were a fringe race, scattered across a single unremarkable system. In the grand ledger of predator dominance, humans were inconsequential, a footnote among thousands of failed, conquered, or obedient species. Observation indicated no threat, no potential beyond the typical survival instincts the predators had studied and easily outmatched in every known case. They would continue, the predators assumed, to follow the patterns established by all who came before, submission or eradication. The predators' arrogance was absolute. Their systems required no reconsideration, their strategies demanded no revision, and their supremacy was treated as eternal. The galaxy had grown accustomed to the inevitability of their rule, and so had the predators themselves. No other intelligence had challenged their doctrine for centuries. In the vast stretches of controlled space, there was no room for surprise, no anomaly capable of undermining centuries of assured victory. They were untouchable, unmatched, and unquestioned. Theirs was a confidence built on flawless execution and the absence of resistance, a certainty that would remain unchallenged, until a new variable, entirely unexpected, appeared on the horizon. The first human signals reached predator systems as curiosity rather than alarm. Initially, the transmissions were faint, irregular, and seemingly inconsequential, a scattered pattern of exploration and resource scanning. Predators interpreted them as primitive data collection, the predictable behavior of an insignificant species. The decision was made to initiate contact, not out of necessity, but to assert control before humans could develop beyond the thresholds the predators anticipated. They dispatched envoys equipped with overwhelming firepower, expecting immediate deference, unquestioned obedience, and visible signs of fear. Humans responded with calm. When the predator vessels appeared at the edge of human space, they did not flee, plead, or submit. Instead, sensors recorded methodical preparations, communication arrays activated, data streams cross-referenced, and tactical simulations calculated silently. The humans did not panic. They acknowledged the presence of a superior force but chose to maintain composure. Questions were transmitted in clear, structured language, inquiries about intent, reason, and the parameters of interaction. There was no hesitation, no faltering tone, no instinctive retreat. The predators were unsettled by the absence of terror. Every species they had ever encountered reacted with immediate subjugation or frantic resistance, but humans exhibited neither. Their responses were deliberate, measured, and consistent with rational logic rather than fear-driven reflex. Attempts to intimidate through threat displays, orbital maneuvers, and controlled power demonstrations were met with reasoned counter-questions. Humans asked about the laws governing predator engagement, their expectations of conduct, and the ethical justifications for unilateral dominance. The predators expected compliance, yet each query was a subtle challenge, an implicit refusal to accept assumptions without scrutiny. Negotiation, though foreign to predator custom, became unavoidable. The humans framed conditions not as concessions but as points of mutual understanding. Predators, unused to engagement where their superiority was questioned calmly rather than defiantly, interpreted this as weakness. They expected aggression or panic. They received clarity. For the first time, the predators confronted the possibility that obedience was not automatic. The humans did not request mercy. They requested explanation, assessment, and verification, as though power itself required justification. Predators attempted to reassert dominance by threatening controlled destruction of human settlements, yet the humans continued to respond rationally, calculating acceptable risk and developing contingency plans. Each display of force was met not with terror but with preparation, adaptation, and strategy. Predator envoys noted with growing unease that the humans absorbed pressure, evaluated it, and responded strategically rather than emotionally. Their measured resilience was alien, incomprehensible within the predator's framework that equated visible fear with survival instinct. The first direct exchange of doctrine occurred in orbit. Humans outlined principles, objectives, and rules of engagement, carefully articulating boundaries without confrontation. Predators realized these beings were organized, resourceful, and capable of projecting influence disproportionate to their apparent strength. Yet the humans were not aggressive. They sought understanding, not conquest. Their calm defiance was a silent challenge, a mirror reflecting the predator's own certainty back at them, but without the expected recoil. Within predator hierarchies, unease spread. Advisors calculated, analyzed, and debated. No record existed of any species that maintained composure under intimidation, questioned strategy without fear, and engaged without aggression. Humans defied every predictive model, exposing flaws in the assumption that domination alone ensured compliance. The envoys reported back. The species could not be dismissed as irrelevant. They could not be reduced to predictable outcomes. A decision would have to be made, either to escalate forcibly, risking miscalculation, or to observe further and adapt, a concept foreign to a civilization that had never faced uncertainty. Predator arrogance had encountered resistance of an unfamiliar type. They did not yet fear humans, but they had begun to recognize them as variables outside conventional parameters. The galaxy, long stagnant under their supremacy, had encountered a species whose responses could not be anticipated or controlled through intimidation alone. A subtle tension emerged. The first error had been made, not in strength, but in underestimating the human capacity to engage on their own terms. The first wave of predator assault struck with the precision of inevitability. Fleet formations converged, orbital bombardments initiated, and planetary defenses faced annihilation. Predators expected immediate collapse, a repeat of every civilization before, yet humans responded differently. They did not panic, they did not surrender. Instead, they implemented layered defense protocols, dispersing command functions across autonomous stations and mobile units. Their approach was not based on confrontation alone but on adaptability, resilience, and continuous learning. Human ships did not mimic predator patterns, they evolved in real time. Initial losses were severe, but each defeat provided data. Fleet formations adjusted mid-battle, weapon configurations were optimized within cycles of hours rather than generations, and damaged vessels returned to service with improvised improvements. Predators encountered something they had never seen, a species that assimilated failure into strategy instantaneously. Each encounter reduced predictability, undermining centuries of tactical assumptions. The humans exploited environmental variables with ingenuity. Asteroid fields, gravity wells, and solar phenomena became tools, not obstacles. Ambushes occurred where predators assumed certainty. Traps lay where they expected linear engagement. Technology captured from early skirmishes was repurposed with alarming efficiency, integrated into human systems within days. Predators, reliant on their overwhelming initial advantage, found themselves reacting to unfamiliar maneuvers rather than executing planned victories. Confidence gave way to caution, and caution revealed vulnerability. Beyond mechanics, human coordination was unlike any predator hierarchy. Communication flowed fluidly, decentralized yet coherent. Decisions were made simultaneously across fleets, integrating information from multiple theaters without requiring rigid command structures. Leadership rotated organically, guided by expertise rather than rank alone, allowing for rapid adaptation. Predators struggled to impose centralized control on a conflict that humans fragmented into countless autonomous operations, each reinforcing the other. Civilian infrastructure, often overlooked by predator logic, became an unexpected advantage. Entire populations participated in logistical, technological, and intelligence networks, supplying the front lines with efficiency previously reserved for military-industrial complexes. Every action, from energy production to tactical analysis, contributed directly to operational effectiveness. Predators assumed that population centers were vulnerabilities. Humans turned them into force multipliers, integrating every facet of society into the war effort. The battle expanded beyond conventional warfare. Predators relied on brute force and intimidation. Humans exploited deception, unpredictability, and psychological resilience. Environmental manipulation, feints, and information warfare disrupted predator coordination. Predictions that once held for entire sectors failed as humans reshaped the battlefield faster than the predators could calculate outcomes. Each loss experienced by predators was not simply a tactical setback, it was an anomaly in centuries of assumed control, eroding the certainty they had always relied upon. Predator philosophy began to strain under the pressure. Strength alone no longer dictated success. Adaptability, endurance, and ingenuity, qualities they had dismissed as secondary in a species so small and apparently insignificant, demonstrated strategic weight far exceeding physical scale. Humans survived assaults that should have been decisive, then countered with innovations that exploited predator blind spots. Resistance was systematic, relentless, and cohesive, yet it carried no arrogance, no grandstanding, only unyielding purpose. By the conclusion of the first extended campaign, predators were forced to acknowledge a new reality. Their doctrine of immediate supremacy had faltered. Humans had endured, adapted, and retaliated beyond expectations. The galaxy had never witnessed a species capable of absorbing overwhelming force and transforming it into advantage. Confidence was replaced by caution, assumptions were questioned, and the predators realized that victory would not be immediate or guaranteed. A new variable, entirely unforeseen, had entered the equation: humans, resilient, relentless, and impossible to predict. Predators began to recognize a phenomenon they had never encountered: human persistence. Unlike every other species, humans did not yield under pressure, did not negotiate from fear, and did not abandon their objectives when faced with superior force. Their resistance was not chaotic but structured, deliberate, and morally grounded. It became increasingly clear that defeating them through conventional intimidation was impossible. Their strength lay in endurance, and endurance was not measured in raw power but in unwavering commitment. Human society functioned as a cohesive organism. Every sector, every settlement, contributed to survival and advancement, not because it was commanded but because it was understood as essential. Civilians, scientists, and engineers participated actively in maintaining operational momentum, ensuring that the losses sustained in battle never translated into stagnation. Knowledge was shared, decisions were debated, and resources were redistributed to meet evolving challenges. Unlike predator hierarchies, which relied on fear-driven compliance, humans achieved unity through shared purpose and mutual accountability. The psychological impact on predators was profound. Their doctrine had always assumed a predictable response: panic, surrender, or blind aggression. Humans ignored these expectations. When entire fleets were neutralized or planets threatened, humans adapted, improvised, and continued operations with minimal disruption. They did not collapse, they recalibrated. Predators had never experienced a species that treated adversity as a catalyst rather than a catastrophe. Their confidence in inevitability began to erode, replaced by calculation, hesitation, and doubt. Humans also demonstrated an unexpected form of strategy: the willingness to accept sacrifice without losing cohesion. Losses were anticipated, analyzed, and incorporated into broader operational planning. Young pilots, engineers, and soldiers understood the stakes, yet commitment to collective survival never wavered. Where predators relied on shock and overwhelming firepower, humans employed resilience and adaptability, transforming setbacks into learning opportunities. Every defeat became a foundation for improved tactics, and every victory, no matter how small, reinforced morale and cohesion. Predators observed that humans were not motivated by conquest or domination in the traditional sense. Their objectives were survival, protection, and autonomy. This distinction was disorienting. Predators had always equated aggression with dominance, yet humans resisted without aggression, persisted without arrogance, and adapted without hesitation. The absence of ego-driven pride or the need to assert superiority made humans unpredictable and strategically potent. Attempts to manipulate or intimidate were ineffective, as humans did not perceive power in the same terms as their oppressors. The predator's internal communications reflected growing anxiety. Traditional strategies failed repeatedly, and attempts to isolate or annihilate human enclaves met with unexpected coordination. Information sharing among humans outpaced predator intelligence collection. Every calculation assumed limitations the humans consistently exceeded. Predictive models broke down, assumptions that had guided millennia of conquest were invalidated. The very foundation of predator supremacy, the ability to anticipate and control outcomes, was crumbling. As conflicts prolonged, predator alliances began to fracture. Some factions advocated retreat, others demanded escalation, but no consensus emerged. The human's unyielding nature created tension among the once unified predator command. The realization took root: humans were not merely surviving, they were reshaping the rules of engagement. Resistance had become a form of deterrence, a force multiplier that predators could not confront directly without exposing themselves to unforeseen risk. By the conclusion of this phase, the predators understood that their superiority was no longer absolute. The galaxy had encountered an intelligence that defied intimidation, a civilization that harnessed endurance and unity to overcome disparities in strength. Humans were not just participants in conflict, they were arbiters of new paradigms. The predators faced a choice they had never confronted: adapt to a species that refused to break, or risk irrelevance in a galaxy that had finally learned to resist. Predators discovered that dominance could no longer be maintained through fear alone. After prolonged engagement, the humans had transformed the galactic landscape, not through brute force, but through persistent demonstration of capability, ingenuity, and restraint. Their influence spread quietly yet decisively, altering alliances, strategies, and perceptions across entire star systems. Predators could no longer act with certainty. Every movement now carried the potential for unforeseen consequences. Humanity had become the standard by which the galaxy measured potential threats and capabilities. Diplomacy replaced unilateral action. Predators, once accustomed to issuing commands and expecting obedience, were compelled to negotiate on equal footing. Humans did not impose terms through terror, yet the results were unequivocal. Agreements were mutually advantageous but reflected the reality that predator aggression could no longer go unchecked. Other species, long subjugated or neutralized, began seeking collaboration with humans, recognizing the effectiveness of their strategy and the impossibility of relying solely on predator power. Influence had become the ultimate form of strength. Human tactics evolved beyond immediate conflict into strategic deterrence. Fleet positioning, resource distribution, and technological adaptation created conditions where predators had to calculate risk at every engagement. Attempts to intimidate were countered not with panic but with preparation. Acts of aggression met with proportionate but measured responses. Humanity had established a balance of power that did not require total annihilation but guaranteed consequences for reckless action. They redefined what it meant to be formidable, not by destruction, but by resilience, foresight, and adaptability. Psychological supremacy solidified. Predators, who once believed themselves untouchable, now approached every operation with caution. Their confidence, built over millennia, was replaced by constant assessment and contingency planning. The unpredictability of human responses forced them into defensive postures. Where other species had fallen swiftly, humans thrived under pressure. Where previous civilizations sought surrender, humans sought understanding and opportunity. Their composure had become a weapon in itself, one that eroded the foundation of predator authority without firing a single decisive shot. The galaxy began to shift around this new paradigm. Long-standing predator alliances fractured as some factions recognized the efficiency of collaboration with humans rather than confrontation. Trade routes, diplomatic channels, and technological exchanges expanded under human influence, creating networks that strengthened cohesion among disparate species. Predators observed that power was no longer defined solely by fleets or weaponry but by the ability to inspire loyalty, trust, and cooperation while simultaneously enforcing boundaries through calculated strength. Humans themselves did not pursue conquest. Their victories were deliberate but restrained, rooted in principles rather than ego. They shaped the galaxy quietly, demonstrating that leadership could exist without tyranny, strength without oppression, and influence without fear. Entire sectors stabilized not through domination, but through deterrence and strategic alliances, where humans became the measure of capability rather than the predator threat. Their restraint amplified authority, as predators realized any reckless action risked escalation with a species that refused to break. By the conclusion of this transformation, the galaxy had learned a fundamental truth: the apex predator is not defined solely by the power it wields, but by the power it cannot provoke. Humans had achieved what no other species could: they imposed order through resilience, earned respect without annihilation, and recalibrated the rules of supremacy. Predators were no longer unchallenged. They were forced into a cautious coexistence, recognizing that true dominance required understanding, adaptation, and acknowledgement of a species that refused to yield. The predator's greatest miscalculation had been underestimating human potential. Strength, speed, and raw firepower were insufficient to overcome ingenuity, unity, and unrelenting perseverance. The galaxy had shifted not because humans destroyed everything in their path, but because they endured, learned, and commanded respect through unwavering purpose. Predators were no longer the unquestioned rulers of the stars. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, but as the standard by which the galaxy now measured resilience, ingenuity, and supremacy.